back in the early 90s, I had a new girlfriend who invited me to dinner. I was late for that dinner, many hours late.
Top 100 girlfriends.
Yeah, and the reason why I was late is number 29 on our list of the top 100 video games of all time. It is Star Fox from 1993. This was originally for the Super Nintendo, and there was something special inside each one of the cartridges that came out for this game.
Well, first of all, it introduced 3D gaming to a 16-bit console that was really all about pixels up until this point.
That's right.
And it had the chip called the Super FX chip in there, which
Great
was
name for a chip.
kind of marketing speak, I'm sure, but Argonaut was the English development team that worked on this sucker, and it was phenomenal. It was such a weird, quirky, unique experience. There were like Virtua Fighter and there was Virtua Racing and stuff that Sega was working on. There were some of these early 3D polygonal creations starting to crop up in arcades. It brought that kind of open-ended, open-world exploration home for the very first time, and it just made my eyes pop out of my head when I plugged this into my Super Nintendo back then.
Well, you know, the experience of playing this game took us into outer space.
Yes.
A place we'd been before, obviously, in other video games, but mostly those games were PC games. This game really took us into outer space in a very tangible way, and it was a place I wanted to travel to for a very long time, since 1977, and I saw Star Wars for the first time. This was the first time I could sit on my couch in my living room in my tiny apartment in Chicago, and I felt pulled into my tiny TV screen, and I was just hooked on this thing.
It wasn't even just the visuals either, which were so new and so fresh. I mean, think about it. We had gone from 2D sprite-based, sort of going back and forth action-adventure titles, and now we were journeying through space and flying through giant battleships and stuff. Just incredible, but it was also the audio. The synthesized speech and the cool music enveloping you. This was really remarkable.
This was a dramatic piece of theater, a very effective piece of theater. Now, of course, I'm not Luke Skywalker in this game. I am Star Fox, and I don't think this game would have worked so well if I wasn't as fond of Star Fox as a character as I was, and all of his cohorts, including Slippy Toad and Peppy Hair and that one jerk bird who's always a jerk to. I can't remember what his name is. Who's this one jerk one in there?
I can't remember his name either.
That's why I don't remember him. He's a jerk.
I do love the characters, and I love the mission structure in this and the sort of space opera kind of storytelling and all of these different characters. I like that there's huge boss fights. They were incredibly clever in the level design and in the reach and the ambition of this game, so much so that subsequent Star Fox games kind of suffered a little bit. You know, this was the case of Nintendo being its own worst enemy in a way. They never really were able to recapture the reach of this game. This was such an incredible piece of software, especially when you consider the time frame.
And it is something I think we're discovering many times as we go through our 100 games and 100 movies, that the first kick at anything is almost always the best. The surprise was never there again. I would argue that Star Fox 64 is a very good game, an excellent game in a lot of ways, but it's not as good as the first Star Fox, and certainly didn't hold my attention the way that the first Star Fox did way back in 1993.
Well, Star Fox 64, funnily enough, was one of the first games we ever reviewed on this show. Take a look.
Let's talk about Star Fox 64 for the Nintendo 64.
Star Fox 64 succeeds. I love the four-player mode. I think that playing against your buddies is really cool. And I do like the different levels when it goes into the 3D mode and you're doing the dogfights with all the better pilots out there. I think that's the best part in Star Fox. I'd give it an 8.5.
I had to get out my sword to cut off all the cheese on this game. I mean, Star Fox 64 is a great game, but you got your Slippies and your Crappies and Happy and Goofy, and here's a game that they could have made so sci-fi and so cool, but they threw all these frog characters and all this stuff in. Some of the effects graphically, the explosions and everything are excellent. I've never seen. Yeah, exactly. And I've never seen explosions like that in games before. I give it an 8.3.
So congratulations, Star Fox. We love you. We're talking about the original from 1993 for the Super Nintendo. You are number 29. We're in the 20s now.
Slippy Toad, whenever you're in trouble, Vic and I are always there.
Absolutely.